Dr. Laura is a famous talk show host, and she said in her reading that she discovered an ancient agreement between a husband and his wife before they got married. In legal terms, it was we would call it today a prenuptial agreement. Now, it was 2,300 years old, in which the groom, that is the man, gives the bride, that is the woman, everything: his soul, his life, and his possessions. In return, she shows up for the wedding. I love putting it that way. She shows up. I think most people, as they think about marriage, are figuring out what they want, how to get the best deal possible. Probably the most popular way it's put today is how to find your Mr. or Mrs. Right. However, that's not the way God puts it. I love the way he states it in Genesis 2:18 when he's talking about Adam and finding him what he calls a helper suitable. Turns out to be Eve. Now, these are two Hebrew words. The Old Testament is written in Hebrew, and these two words are rich. The first word, helper, the idea is not that Eve is to be the assistant manager of the garden. That's not the idea. One way you know that is this word helper is most often used of the Lord Yahweh and his help for us. I think you understand the word better when you know suitable. The word suitable is the idea not that she meets my personal checklist of qualities. It actually means the other side or opposite. It's used in the book of Nehemiah of the opposite side of the wall. And together they make a complete wall protecting you from the enemy. What a beautiful picture, looking for your helper suitable. Now, I want to remind you of a couple of things before we jump in today. We almost always know who is speaking in the Song of Solomon because the words are either feminine or masculine. And number two, they're also either singular or plural. So we learn a lot. We also need to know the type of literature. This is poetic narrative. That is, it's a narrative, it's a story written in the form of poetry. It makes it a little more complicated to figure out what it's actually saying sometimes for those concrete thinkers like me. But it's also helpful to know this is an historical relationship, a real relationship, not fictitious. Now, this first section deals with singles. When we start next time, they're going to get married and we're going to be at the wedding. But this time we're talking about how they got to the wedding. That means we will learn some general principles that I think will help singles know how to pursue not their Mr. and Mr. or Mrs. Right, but their helper suitable. Now, here's an overview of the book as a whole, where we're going. It's our roadmap. And we're going to start with the birth. What we're going to see in the birth is there's a yes, yes, her needs, safe and special, run through the whole book. He meets those needs, and his needs being respected and desired, she meets those needs. So it starts out very positively. I want to point out the dating also starts out very positively. She feels safe and special, and he feels he is respected and desired. But you'll notice it goes to the no at the end of that. Now, we want to start by looking inside the mind and heart of the Shulamite. This is the woman. First thing I want you to notice about her is her passion is right out front. She loves him right from the beginning. So you listen at the first, this is chapter 1, verse 2, kiss me and kiss me again. Your love is sweeter than wine. Now, the idea of drinking wine in the mouth and the kissing, these are the idea of passionate kissing that gives you incredible sensation. So this is not just a kiss on the cheek kind of thing. This is a passionate kiss. And then she goes on to say something much stronger. Take me with you. Come, let's run. The king has brought me into his bedroom. Now, this is puzzling because this is chapter 1, verse 2. So let me deal with this as a kind of problem. This is often one of the key reasons why they say this is not chronological. This is just a random poem about love. And she's talking about her love for him, no particular order. And I have to admit that's possible. Maybe I'm wrong about the whole thing. However, I think more likely this is her daydreaming about the king that of all of Israel that she has her heart set on, she's in love with. Uh, and I think you may see it also what 3 and 4 kind of combine. These are like snapshots of the relationship. And this is a picture that I think actually happens later, that they move up to the front in number 4. You see this kind of event happen very often in movies. They move things to the front to show you where they're going. So this is a very passionate section, too early for it to actually be happening. I think it's either happening in her mind, which I think is possible, or second, we're seeing a snapshot of something that's going to happen later because she's going to pursue this end. A second thing I want you to notice in these early verses is her self-doubt. She lacks confidence. I want you to notice that in one particular area. She says, I am dark. And you'll notice that word dark in these verses is used 5 times. Now, this is not ethnic or racial. This primarily deals with someone who works inside and someone who works outside. If you work inside, you're probably wealthier. If you work outside in the sun, in the Middle East, you're going to have skin that's darker, which means you're a middle-class working woman. Now, when you're after the king and he's the one you love, this is not an asset. It's a liability. So she's very much aware of that. And you know that partly because she explains why that's true. My brothers were angry with me. They forced me to care for their vineyards outside. I can't care for myself, so I have to work outside my own vineyard. So she's a hardworking woman. So because of that, her skin's darker than it would be if she only worked inside. However, she also knows her asset. She is beautiful. Now, this is going to be confirmed by her friends, and it's going to be confirmed by Solomon later in the book. Not actually, we're going to see that from Solomon this week. A next thing you see about her is that she has great courage and she initiates. And keep in mind, at this time in the culture of Israel, this is a little unusual. Notice she says, tell me, my love, where are you leading your flocks today? Where will you rest your sheep at noon? So she calls him my love. Now, this seems a strangely intimate term. And if translated like this, it is. One of the things I'd like you to see is this same term, same Hebrew word is used in a range of ways. It can mean my love, it can mean a lover, but it can also mean, as here in Zechariah 13:6, at the house of my friends. So it can deal anywhere from lover to friend. And again, kind of bringing you back to this could be a random love poem, and they're much more, it's just their love early. But also, I think to realize this word, my love, can go all the way from lover all the way to friend. However, it does tell you that they probably had a relationship before this. Now, I want you to notice something else here. Notice the emphasis on you. When she makes a request to him, she uses the word you several times in this verse. You notice that here, you and your flock, you and your sheep. She's very concerned not just where his sheep are, but whether he's going to be there. She's looking for a relationship with him. And this is kind of a little bit of a business. And again, there's some practical sides to this. One is that if she goes to the king's flocks, there's safety. So she could say, my friend, I want to be near your flocks because it's safer. Now, you have to be a good friend to do that, but that's entirely possible here. She's initiating and wants to make sure he's going to be there because that's underneath it her real motive. And she speaks both simply and honestly with what we would call today, I believe, just a touch of flirting, my love, my good friend. And then the principle underneath this is I think you can establish from this it's okay for women to take the first step to begin to say, hey, I have an interest here. And that's what she does. Now, what she does at the same time is establish her moral character. Listen to what she says. This is the last part of verse 7. For why should I wander like a prostitute among your friends, talking to Solomon and their flocks? I'm not, and the word prostitute literally is the word a veiled woman. So you see that and very often translated veiled woman. And the idea in that culture was a veiled woman was a prostitute. You may remember the story of Judah and Tamar, who are ancestors of Jesus himself. And Judah has sex with his daughter-in-law, Tamar, and she's a veiled woman. Doesn't even know it's his daughter-in-law because she's a veiled woman. It's also, according to commentaries, very often that prostitutes would follow shepherds to offer their services. So what she's saying here is a guard. And Solomon, he had lots of wives. He had concubines. He saw somebody, even if they weren't in the royal line, he could make them a part of his concubine group. What she, in essence, is saying is, I want you to understand, I'm not looking for a one-night stand. I'm not a groupie. I have some moral limits here. So look at kind of a summary of what's going on. She knows her heart. She loves him. She struggles with feelings of inferiority. I'm dark, outside working, but also knows her strengths. I'm beautiful. It's okay, and I want to say often courageous to take the first step. It's important to know and should put in here moral limits. And I want you to see the reward that comes from this, his response. Now, this is him speaking. If you don't know, notice this, oh, most beautiful woman. Now, this is a little flirting back. If you say to me, I'm my good friend, and I say, hey, beautiful, what do you have? What question? You know, I'm flirting back a little bit, and he does that here. Now, notice also he says, if you follow the trail of my flock. Now, keep in mind, at the dedication of the temple, which would have been about this time, Solomon had a flock of 120,000 sheep, not a flock, 120,000 sheep he dedicated, which means the flock had to be much, much bigger than that. Now, if you have a flock that size, no trouble figuring out where they are. Their trail's going to be huge. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here is the word if. Now, this is a very telling word here. And I want to do two things. One, I want to show you the significance of this word coming from Solomon's mouth, but also how you can figure it all by yourself. Here's the word if. I went to www.biblehub.com, and I found out this word is used 786 times. This is the Hebrew word, im. And the idea here, if you look it up, it'll tell you in the word study. You can look at it at BDB, which is a lexicon. This is the classic lexicon that I used in graduate school to understand Hebrew words. And he says, now this isn't the only meaning, But one of the meanings of this word if is assuming purely an imaginary case. Now, he gives a couple of examples. Genesis 13:16. If a man were able to number the stars, of course you can't. Even today, we can't do that. And then Genesis 18:26. If a man find 50 righteous in Sodom, I will pardon. You're not going to, but if you could, then yes, I would pardon. So you see, this is a word that can mean if, and I think in this case it does. Uh, but you can't. In other words, if you need directions to follow me, okay, I'll tell you. But you don't need directions. Now, what this tells us is he speaks positively, I want to say even flirtatious words to her. Hey, beautiful. He answers her question. He lets her know in a kind of playful way, he knows she is flirting with him. And I think this leads to the next section, the first date. So let's look at that first date. Several steps we're going to look at, but number one is they spend time and love is born. This is kind of how you know love is going to be born. So I want to look here at his first recorded words to her. I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. Now, don't try this at home. This is a cultural word picture, but you want to be careful to say to your girlfriend, to your wife, or you look like a horse, and probably won't carry very well. But the picture here is of a horse of Pharaoh's chariot, beautiful, majestic, wow kind of picture. Now, the second one, the man still speaking, talks about her cheeks being beautiful, her neck with strings of jewels. She looks beautiful. She looks beautiful. She's the jewels. And what you notice he's doing here is making her feel special. And now turns to her, and she's going to do much the same thing. While the king was at his table. Now, this is the king's table. All by itself, it gives you an idea of majesty, and the perfume spread its fragrance. I don't know. I mean, this has got to be so unbelievably magnificent, five-star kind of thing. That she is overwhelmed. And if she's saying this out loud, some people don't think she is, he would feel respected. I think starting in verse 13, you can say she is. She says, I think out loud, because she often uses the third person about him, my beloved is to me a satchel of myrrh resting between my breasts. Now there has some next to her heart, but also has some sexual implications in that, and calls him again my beloved. Now, it's the same word as my dear friend, but there's kind of an easing and a transitioning safely into a much deeper level. Shows him a respect in the first part and a physical desire here. Now, he's going to bring it up a little bit, and he talks about how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful you are. Your eyes are doves. Now, interesting. This is the most often commented on by Solomon of her eyes are like doves, beautiful eyes, and sometimes piercing right through him. She comes back, and again, there's an intensity building here. How handsome you are, my beloved. Oh, how charming. And our bed is verdant. Now, I need to stop and comment on this. Things are heating up, and I made this picture. It was the best I could come up with. But you'll notice in that culture, they recline when they eat, and they recline on what are called couches to make it a little more comfortable. Beds, I think, is misleading. I think you get the idea in our culture that they're somehow in bed together, and you're thinking, hello, what happened here? That's not the idea. However, it's going to play into what's coming. And the word verdant is, again, it's kind of the idea of five-star. It's plush. It's unbelievably beautiful. that you're just in awe of how incredibly beautiful the whole setting is. But the fact they're reclining is going to play into what's coming. Now, again, things are intensifying, and he's going to move to the idea of safety. This is a little, again, poetry, so harder, but he says, the beams of our house are cedars, our rafters are firs. Now, cedars and firs are both what are called softwoods. Now, it doesn't mean they're really soft, but they're very pliable, and the idea is both of these are very fragrant woods. One article I read said firs are the most fragrant of all woods. But the idea is we have something pliable that's being molded and shaped, and something that's very fragrant. Things are good. And notice twice he says our, not my, our. We have an our. When you move in a relationship from me and you to our, you've taken a step. So he's here saying, I want to build something that's beautiful, fragrant, that lasts. Now, she tells him, you hit the mark. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valley. And I love his comeback. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young men. In other words, compared to you, every other woman is a sticker. She will poke you, but you are different. You are so beautiful. I love that. Now, so things are becoming more and more intense. So the conversation's becoming more passionate. The woman shows both her respect for the king and a desire for the king. The desire softer here, but I think you can see it a little. The man's words show the woman he feels she is special and wants her to feel safe. That's about to be challenged, but he wants her to feel safe. Now, we're going to reach the first of one of two stopping points. There's danger. As you realize you're with the person you love, there's wonderful feelings and terrible dangers. So listen to what she says. Like an apple tree among the trees of a forest is my beloved among the young men. If you were walking in the forest and you saw an apple tree, you would be shocked. I mean, it's just not what you expect in a forest. That's him. He's saying, you are a standout among men. And then she says, I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Now, this is the idea of being under him, under that tree, enjoying him. Now, keep in mind, they're reclining. And I think it's possible, he doesn't say this explicitly, but that in this situation, he is leaning over her. It's a passionate moment, and I want to say a dangerous moment. She says to him, in this intimate moment, strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples. Raisins, many commentators say, because of the seeds in it, is a picture of wanting to have children, being something you eat when you want to get pregnant. The idea of apples is the idea for some of an aphrodisiac to increase the sexual desire. I don't know that I think that's really strong. However, the last part makes it very clear that she is passionately falling for him. For I am faint with love. She is like under his spell. Again, you see the danger. And again, she's recording this, so I think that's significant. His left hand is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. Several different commentators mentioned that this is a passionate, some have said most possible passionate position. Keep in mind, they are reclining in this position. Incredibly dangerous, about to lose control. And then the Spirit of God. I think this is the Spirit of God. Notice several things about this verse. Notice, first, it's to the daughters of Jerusalem. So they can't be speaking. It's not the woman who says this. It's not the man who says this. It doesn't tell us the Spirit of God. But by process of elimination, he's the only person I can think of who could be saying this. And he says, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field. I don't know if you've ever been walking, but I remember being at a Christian campground and walking down a road and turning a corner, and there were a couple of deers right on the road, one just off the road, and I froze. And they poked their head up and looked at me, and as long as I didn't move, they were okay. But the minute I took a step, they were gone. This is, in other words, a fragile moment. Don't ruin it. And that's what he says. Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Uh, the word it is a first person common singular. It's not he, not she, but it. And the idea is not just has to be neutral, it, but it can be either way. It can be a he or a she too. I think what he's talking about here is the Spirit of God, God's timing for this relationship. This is not the time to make love, not the time to consummate the relationship. Stop. And the implication is they do. Now, here, again, quality time, the opportunity for the relationship to grow. It doesn't always happen, but it does here. And in the helper suitable, it will. The man uses his words to show the woman she is special and to help her feel safe. Number three, the woman uses her thoughts and words to show the man he is respected and desired. There is a growing closeness before marriage that brings in an inescapable danger. You must have a moral framework before you enter the relationship. Even so, when the Spirit of God speaks, listen. Now, I want you to notice how there is a strengthening of the ties and the relationship is going to grow. They have gotten past, I think now they have a pretty good feel. They are the helper suitable and the relationship is going to grow. It's the fun kind of getting to know, deepening your relationship. So here's the positive. My lover, she is speaking. My lover, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My lover is like a gazelle and a young stag. Look, there he stands behind the wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. It's like he's so excited to see her. He's bouncing all over the place. I think for me, I remember this is me, believe it or not, and my wife Janelle, when we got married. When we were dating, I remember being so in love with her that we went to school at the same university, but I would go to work after school and work till 5 o'clock. I would go home, shower, and clean up. 3 or 4 days a week, I would think of a reason I had to see Janelle. And she lived a good hour away from me, and I would drive all the way to see her, planning to stay just a couple of minutes, but staying a few hours, and then driving all the way home. Then I had to do my homework. Oh my goodness. And then I would turn around and repeat again. I was so crazy in love with her. Now, and again, it's important, I think, she's the one recording this. She has this written in her mind. My lover spoke and said to me, now keep in mind, these are memories that she's made because of what happened. Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. There's this beautiful, incredible, creative time they spend together. He's getting a context for them to develop their relationship deeper. Now, this is singles, admittedly, and I think very often people get married, they become what we call in America couch potatoes. I remember hearing about one couple who had been married several months, almost a year, And the husband got in the routine of coming home from work, eating dinner, sitting down and watching TV until it was time to go to bed, and then going to bed. And do this day after day, week after week. And one day he got a text and it said, "Help, I'm being held hostage at 105 Main Street." And he realized that's his address. And he jumped up, put on his coat, took his wife out to dinner for the very first time in about a month. They had stopped having quality time. This often happens when people get married, and it's wrong. You have to keep building this kind of plush, wonderful, deepening, growing relationship. Now, there's a principle here: be creative, make the time quality time. It doesn't have to be expensive. This is my son-in-law, Tim, and my daughter, Mandy. When they were dating, they were both also college students, and they were very poor. And they're a group of guys, four guys, I think it was, and four girlfriends. The guys rented a truck on Valentine's Day, got a big a table and put candles on it and tablecloth on it, and they cooked for their girlfriends a romantic dinner. And then they all had $5 each, and they went to a secondhand store, and they could only spend the $5 to buy each other a gift. And this became a memory that is etched on my daughter's mind and on mine, because I thought, wow, so creative. Uh, Now, here, I want you to see another part of that, and there is a solving of problems. There is a learning to communicate. Notice here, this is where they run into their first problem. Very important to learn to deal with problems. And notice what he says. My duck, him talking to her. You're in the clefts of the rock, excuse me, in the hiding places of the mountainside. She has withdrawn from him. This is a poetic way of saying, come on, talk to me. What's wrong? Something's obviously wrong. And he says, show me your face. Let me hear your voice. I know we've got a problem. I don't know what it is, but I know we have a problem. And then he says, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyard. Now, this was something she would have understood because she had vineyards and took care of them. Foxes are small, but they can go in and eat the blossoms of the vine before they have a chance to mature, and ruin the fruit before it becomes fruit. And that's what he's saying. These are little problems. We don't want them to we don't want these problems to ruin a relationship. Wow, what a great way of saying that. But the problem is sometimes you ask this, but you're not ready for the answer. So listen to what she says. My beloved is mine and I am his. Now she does here what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15, speaking the truth in love, which I think may be one of the most powerful principles for all relationships. Speak the truth in love. So she here says, I love you. I'm yours and you're mine. But then he says, he browses among the lilies. Now, that's a strange thing. Again, poetry hides some of the meaning. But in the book, they've established what the lily is. She says earlier, I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. He's called her a beautiful woman. She's a beautiful woman. But now he's wandering among the beautiful women. And so she's going to give him some advice. She's going to say to him, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the rugged mountains. Get away from them. You know what's happening here? She doesn't feel special. She doesn't feel safe. He's ruined that. So she's saying, I love you, but that's the problem. Wow. Now, I'm going to go through quickly what happens next. She can't sleep. She initiates to reconcile. Again, I love this woman. She is probably the wrong word to use here, but just her character is so amazing. She gets hurt in the process. She's reunited. And again, the passionate is reignited because she loves him so much. And again, when you've had a fight with someone you love and you reconcile, you're closer than ever. I always think when Janelle and I have a fight and we're reconciled, I always think of it like a rain that comes in the whole air. Everything feels so clean. That's the picture here. But then something happens that ignites that. Well, this is what ignites it, is their reconciliation. And she says to him about him, I held him and would not let him go until I brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. She is bringing him to the bedroom of her mother, which is a kind of a common way of saying, she's ready to make love with him. She's bringing him to a bedroom. Now, again, for the second time, listen to these words, the same words we heard before. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the doves of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until he so desires, until it's God's timing. This is not the right time. Wait. Now we're going to move next week into the wedding, and we're going to see, you're going to be invited to the wedding, but the most amazing thing of all, you're going to be invited to the wedding night. Wow. Hang on. Now, I want to go to a few questions for you to think about. What is one strength of the woman? What is one area of insecurity in the woman? What is one way the woman shows a desire for the man? What is one example where the man's words help the woman feel special? Do you think the woman did anything wrong up to this point? Do you think the man did anything wrong up to this point? If you are married or dating, how can you help your partner feel special? If you are married or dating, how can you show respect for your partner? And again, these are questions, I should say, the first one for the male, second one for the female. Before entering a dating relationship, what are your limits? How did the couple show good communication skills? Do you have good communication skills with your spouse or girlfriend? And how can you improve them? For singles, how can the Spirit of God help you establish boundaries? I have a project for you to do. Be creative in making a quality time together. What are some creative, inexpensive ways to spend time together as singles? What are some creative, inexpensive ways to spend time together as married couples? Think of some ways, and then plan a date. It can be real or fictitious. Only fictitious if you don't have a relationship right now. But if you have one, plan and execute a date that will be creative but inexpensive. Let's pray together. Father God, I thank you so much for the truths of this book. May you etch them on our hearts that we may build relationships that are pleasing to you and might really help us to build relationships that the world sees and knows of your love for the church and the church's love for you. In Jesus' name, amen.